Hi, friends. I'm Heather Miller, CEO and founder of social impact startup Grasshopper, talent acquisition and DEI specialist, mom of 2 humans and 3 fur babies, most under 4, former professional ballet and hip hop dancer, yoga teacher, interior designer, caregiver, provider, retirement planner, innovator, social connector, and the list goes on. As you can tell from my bio, I've always taken drive to the extreme, and for the most part, done pretty well juggling all of my hats. However, I say this on behalf of most of us, the past 3 years have been very challenging. My personal experience included moving to an unknown city, the unexpected death of my mother, and the birth of my first child 2 weeks later, launching a startup during maternity leave, the pandemic, building diversity strategies for a global corporation in the wake of George Floyd's death, another baby, and then, the icing on the cake, a layoff. I felt like I was approaching a midlife crisis with no space to do so. As a result, I've been thinking about balance and whether that's actually a thing. Join me as I speak with some amazing thought leaders and women in my life to understand how they keep the fire going and the lights on while staying sane. We'll explore drive, juggling priorities, taking no prisoners with your schedule, love and sickness, pursuing your dreams, enjoying the journey, and figuring out what is right for you. We hope these conversations help you err on the side of midlife epiphany versus midlife crisis. Welcome to Balanceness. Penelope, welcome to Balanceness. We're so excited to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. I've just read your bio, but I would love if you could please introduce yourself to the community. And of course, we're talking about you and your work in the context of balance. So include all of yourselves, all parts of your lives.
Okay, well, this is perfect for me because I have always had a lot going on and have had to learn to balance, right? So certainly I'm a wife. I've been married for 33 years, I think.
Wow, congrats.
Get to the point where I'm kind of like, how many years was it? And mother of 2. I have one grandson. I'm an author of fiction and nonfiction. Also write magazine articles for the pharmaceutical industry and in general, which I want to begin doing much more of in the near future. I'm a pharma industry consultant. I have my own consulting firm. It's PDC Pharma Strategy. And so that really evolved from my interest in quality assurance in the industry and compliance, which is what led me to an interest in general quality management, right, which spans many, many industries. Let's see, I'm an artist. I mentor a couple of young people. A new thing for me is building sort of, I don't know if you call it advocacy, but really speaking out and trying to communicate and be a leader for a couple of things that I've dealt with in my life. And one of them is what they're calling chronic PTSD, from childhood trauma, and also neurodiversity. I'm not exactly neuroregular. Let's see, and what else? And I'm an entrepreneur. My daughter and I started another business that we still have going. So just a lot of stuff.
Wow, that is a lot. I think of all of our guests, you just had the like longest laundry list. But of course, like we're all dynamic and we're multitaskers and multi-careerists. That's amazing. So given everything that's on your plate, one of my questions for all of our guests is, do you actually believe in the concept of balance?
I do, but I don't believe I think it's not helpful to believe that every day and every hour and every second of your life is going to be perfectly balanced, because that's just not realistic, and it doesn't even conform to the rules of, nature and science. So, but I do believe in balance. Of course, it's incredibly important. When I was very young, in my first pharma industry job back in the early 90s, myself and a few women put together this presentation about working mothers. And it's so funny to look back now, because we literally were afraid that we were going to get fired. Like, it's like, this is really not the thing to do. But, we felt it was important, and it was at a sort of a departmental function for the year where, we were all showing our work as well. And they said, please feel free to, bring to the table something, related to work. So that's what we did. So I've always, valued that, of course.
And what was your major offering, or what was the outcome of the research? Like, what were you trying to prove to the workplace?
I know I have a picture of it. I can't remember everything right now that was on. It was, what a poster presentation is? Like,
yeah.
So, it talked about, I think we had statistics, growing statistics about women working, and we had examples of things that would be helpful, things like that. And I can't really say that unless I think if something major happened, I would remember.
Yeah.
But I do remember being really happy and surprised that a lot of people, even men, everybody came up and said, wow, this is really neat, and you're so brave. So we didn't get fired.
and really I assume what you were trying to do is sort of challenge some of the policies, or just make your lives as working mothers either recognized or a little bit easier, just sort of trying to find that balance in the workplace.
And I remember feeling back then that it was almost like if we did that or said anything, it would be perceived as complaining.
Yeah.
Or trying to get out of work or something. And we were, I'm not that kind of person at all. I mean, I'm really dedicated. But when I was young and I had children, I used to always tell my bosses, I would make a point to say, I have to leave, when my day's over, because I have to go pick up my children. Because my husband had a job that sort of in the medical field where he couldn't, go get them. So that was sort of my duty, and that was fine. And because people would work late, I'm sure they do it now, and they really wouldn't do anything. They were just there because you were supposed to work late. And I just thought that didn't make any sense.
Yeah. And also, I still feel like we need to challenge the school system or the childcare system a little bit. Who is able to leave work at 2:30, 3:30 when your children get off school? I still don't get it. I've got two little ones. It's impossible.
I know, and certainly tremendous amount has changed.
Yeah.
Even in my career, at one point, we got computers, and then that made it a little easier. But then we were all working at home, late. When our kids went to bed. And then, but, I finally, at one point at J&J, I was able to work at home one day a week. I think it started at J&J. And that was a tremendous help. I picked Wednesday because that was the middle of the week. And I thought I can just, regroup, and it just helped me a lot.
I remember in my consulting career when we were given 1 to 2 days a week, or just sort of feeling out when the team came in, we would come in, but just, minimizing like the commute, the subway commute or the driving commute. I mean, it is tremendously helpful.
Right. And now, so many young people work from home, which is wonderful. But I have been hearing a lot of kind of odd stories about people just, not showing up for work and these kind of things. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I do think that no matter how flexible you are, there should be sort of some rules of decorum and manners.
Of course, you're still employed. You still gotta toe the line. But I want to talk about your book. and I'm saying this without any judgment at all, but I was so pleasantly surprised because I guess the title of your book is 5-Star Career. And I guess I had some expectations that it was going to be about achieving success, or based on what we typically think of as work success or career success. So I was so pleasantly surprised when I finished the book, and even as I was deep diving, realizing that what you're really talking about is self-fulfillment and personal fulfillment. And I really love that. So I'm wondering why you chose to focus on that, as opposed to sort of the more, let's say, traditional book that could have been written.
Right. That's such a great question. And, where the 5 stars come in, right, is how we go online and review everything, right? 1 to 5 stars. So basically, when you're doing that, you're actually contributing a step in the science of quality management, because you're saying, I purchased this product and I was satisfied with it. So if you're very, very satisfied, it's 5 stars, right? And the company that made that product, theoretically, and so many of them do, and certainly and in high risk industries, they're actually required by law to do this in various ways, is to understand the customer, what the customer needs, what the customer wants, and then make that, and then have the customer be satisfied, right? So as I was learning all this in my career, I eventually began just kind of applying it to myself. And I was dealing with, especially as a younger person, dealing with, things that happened in my childhood and trying to, find myself and all that kind of stuff. And I realized, wow, like this is a very good foundation to build upon in terms of understanding what kind of life I want to have, right? So, of course, the book focuses on career. So, to me, the whole premise of the book is, it is about success, but it's success based on what you value, what fulfills you. And that's the trick, because, of course, so many people feel like they're not successful if they don't meet all this criteria of, culture and society or their parents or whatever. And, even 30-something-year-old adults, it's like, of course you're grown, you have kids of your own, but you still have your parents in your head. And,
Right. Always.
Yeah. So anyways, I hope that explains, because I feel like, well, I think for me, I don't know. Sometimes we do want what everybody else wants and what we think we should have, but, the book goes through at least helping people to think about that and make sure that, what you think you want is really what you want, right?
Absolutely. What an amazing epiphany to be able to draw on a process that you learned through your work, your career, your research, and then apply it on a more personal level. Like, so many of us are looking for a roadmap. That's what Grasshopper has been about, providing a roadmap for women in their careers. So that's kudos to you for being able to kind of find that likening and then apply that to your life. It's
and certainly I'm not suggesting it's the only way that someone's going to be successful, but like you said, it is a roadmap and it's based on science. And I mean, literally, I don't think people realize, like, we actually have a science that tells us how to plan something we want, create it, and be satisfied with it. So, I mean, it's like, when I thought about it more and more and how many other applications it could have, I just got really, really excited. And, I get really passionate sometimes and probably sound, at the risk of sounding crazy or something, but I just really feel passionate about it, and
Yeah.
want to talk about it. And I'm continuing my pharma career, of course, but this is really my passion now and what, I want to move toward as I get older,
Yeah. Well, maybe, and I realize that maybe our questions aren't really going to touch on all of the steps of quality management. And of course, I've read the book, but for our listeners who haven't, do you think you could just give us like a super high level of the quality management process?
Right. Well, okay. So quality management in itself is, I guess it is a process, but if you think of the whole concept, it's again, determining what, so it started in industry, right? Or manufacturing. So let's look at it from that viewpoint. That's easier to initially explain. So a manufacturing company decides they're going to build, widgets. So part of quality management is, like I said, finding out what the customer needs. Well, first, before some of these things can happen at the same time, but having a culture that supports all of what I'm going to talk about. Putting quality first, meaning, quality is defined as the level of satisfaction of your customer. So that should always come first. So say you have this culture, then you identify your system. So basically in manufacturing, that would be all of your equipment, your steps, your people, all that kind of stuff. It's not the steps and people and equipment of the store next, the business next door, right? That you don't have control over that. So then once you know your product and you've done your research, what customer need this product is going to fill, right? Then, and I'm trying to just tell at a high level. Then when you produce the product, you have quality checks along the way in the manufacturing line, right? When something goes wrong, you have a process for how to look at it and say, oh, what was the root cause of this? It's not that, Sarah pushed the wrong button. It's not Sarah's fault. Sarah's lazy. It's deeper than that. It's like, well, why? Why did she push the wrong button? Is the button in a bad place? Or I don't know, really the root cause. Did she not have training? Things like that. So then you use your root cause analysis, you come up with solutions, right? Then each solution, for your solutions too, you want to stay within your system. For example, and these are kind of silly examples, but for example, you wouldn't say, well, I'm going to get Jim and the business over there to come over here and fix it, because that's not your system, right? I mean, you're going to call somebody to fix something. That might not have been good. Anyways, so you do what you can within your system, and that gives you the most choice of controlling what happens next, right? And then you decide on risks. Like, well, if we move that button, what's the risk associated with that? If there's not any risk, then okay, let's do it. If there is, then you think about, well, could I live with that? No, or can I live with that? Okay, but we also have to retrain her. What are you going to do to lower the risk? So anyways, then, the products come out at the end and you have in manufacturing, you have like a last check. And anyway, so it's really monitoring, knowing what you want or what your customer wants. And in my book, when applied to yourself, I'm saying you are your customer. So like define what you want. Then, it's essentially when applied to a person, it's really about decision making, right? Because there's all these steps in your life. So, you can, and you should plan out if you can, but always be thinking about your own system, right? And then I talk about how to make, good decisions based on how they do it in the science quality management. And then, when things go wrong, what you do.
Yeah.
And then, the idea is you eventually, I'm not saying, one day you're just totally satisfied and that's it, because who would want that anyways, right?
I found the metaphor of the product line
Uh-huh.
extremely helpful
Right.
in just understanding how this whole system applies to your
Right.
life and your career.
Like, say you want to be a doctor. Your process is kind of, well, I'm going to have to go to college. I'm going to have to go to medical school. I'm going to have to do this. But then, you're thinking, well, but I also want to get married. I want to have children. And, what you got to think that through a little bit as much as you can. I mean, and in the science of quality management, it's acknowledged that there's going to be things that come at you that you did not account for.
Right. Right. You talk about variations and yeah, exactly. And I mean, that brings us back to balance, the whole idea that, there's going to be all these things that fall into your path and you have to make decisions around them. But it was also and we could talk about this in a bit, but the sort of work that you do in differentiating the subjective and objective decisions was really helpful as well. But I want to talk about authenticity, because you said it's key to defining what quality means to you. A lot of us have a really hard time understanding how we're different, how we're unique, how are we authentic. So how do you suggest that someone identifies how they're unique from the next person?
Right. Well, I guess I don't view authenticity as a measurement of how unique you are from everyone else.
Okay.
I mean, everybody obviously is unique in some ways, but we all have a lot in common too, right?
True. Very
So,
true.
to me, it's really about identifying, what you want and need and how you want to express yourself, and just outside the influence of, your friend or your parents or your society. And I'm not saying that I don't mean it in a way that you're going to go, run wild and hurt people, and so be it. I don't.
Right.
Nothing
We
like
still
that.
need to be socially responsible.
But reasonable. Yeah, we're not going to hurt it. But I do believe, there's all kinds of people in the world. I mean, there's some people that really, truly. I'm not saying they're not unique. Of course they are. They're an individual, but maybe they really do just want, I don't say just, but want to have a simple life and want to have a cute little house and be, own a little store. And, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And if that is really what is going to make that person happy and comfortable, then that's what they should be doing, despite, whoever's telling them, well, you should get a bigger store and get a bigger house. And,
Right. So,
um,
so what I'm hearing here is that you're talking about, like, you identify your unique desires and what it
right,
is that makes you happy and fulfilled.
right. And again, if your desire is similar to other people's, that's okay. I think some people get hung up on that. It's like,
True. Yeah,
I
we all have to be so
I
different.
kind of do like that. So what's wrong with me? I must not be special. But
I get you.
you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah. But that actually takes me to the next question that I have. In your book, you talk about Maslow's theory that we all have a need for self-actualization. And that immediately made me think of this discussion that I had with a friend of mine where we were kind of talking about our careers or lack thereof, and she kind of said, well, I don't have ambition the way that you have ambition. And I'm guessing that she was sort of kind of talking about drive, or
Mhm.
my desire to get to a certain level in my career. So again, then we're talking about unique desires here. So why do you believe, like, what proves what proof do you have that we all need self-actualization, and what does that really mean to you?
Right. To me, it means, you know, it's kind of aligned with that authenticity. It's getting to the point in your life where you're at peace with who you are, wherever you're at. And I think I like Maslow's theory because, I definitely saw myself go through it, and it makes sense from almost like a biological standpoint. In other words, if you're starving for food, like literally, you're not going to worry about, what your outfit looks like that day. Like you just can't, right? And I'm not talking about, me or you hungry, we need to eat lunch. If you're really starving, or if if no one ever loved you, and made you feel safe, you're going to have to get past that point of looking for love and safety, because it's just a natural biological thing. Everybody needs that. And this is what, an issue I had with growing up, because I grew up in a very dramatic home where my mom had a lot of issues and was really abusive. And it took me so long to realize that I just didn't feel loved. And I was just, I was just desperate to be loved, because I needed someone to tell me that I was lovable, and it's sad. But it kind of, I had good grades and I was doing fine. I'm not saying I was failing everything else, but that was my mission, it kind of, and sometimes we have this subconsciously, right? And we don't realize it. And it's what do you call it? Self-defeating, because it's holding us back from going further, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. And then once you get past that stage, then you really start to realize, oh, well, here's what I want. It's like sometimes we want what we want because we still didn't get something that we needed from a really deep perspective.
Yeah.
So
that makes a lot of
sense.
sense.
I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but that I've just learned in my own life that if you ignore that and say, oh, that's fine, that was before and now I'm a new person, it comes back to haunt you. It just,
Yeah. And that kind of speaks to another question I had for you. And you talk about how we could all benefit from a deeper understanding of ourselves, rather than spending time on analyzing others. And is there something in your research that shows you why we do that? Like, why is it so hard to examine ourselves and focus on others?
Right.
Rather than focus on ourselves as opposed to others, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think it's, and again, I haven't done extensive research on that, but it's I think everybody would agree. Sometimes it's just easier and at a more basic level to just blame somebody else, right? Just like kids do. I didn't do it. He did it. My younger daughter used to say her sister did it. And then when her sister moved out, I said, well, she's not here. And she said, well, a ghost did it.
Oh, I've got that with the little boys in this household. I totally get it.
My book talks about why, say if something went wrong, and a lot of times we analyze people because something went wrong or we didn't like something. First of all, just sitting around analyzing someone for the sake of it is kind of a waste of time. I do think that you should, of course, seek to understand the people in your life, but to really over focus on it, that's not good. Because you can't control what they do, right? And you could be wrong. I've met so many people that think they are so right about something when I knew they weren't right, but I wasn't going to tell them because, it was something more benign, but, it would hurt their feelings or whatever. So, in the lens of the science of quality management, you do that as well, right? The company, like when something goes wrong, when you're making a product, you explore, you look for that root cause, but you look for it in your own house, right? Now, if it turns out some part, for a machine you were given was defective, then yeah, you got to go get a new one or whatever. But you don't just automatically, blame everybody. And, because, you're not going to fix it that way, right? It's good to analyze yourself. And I do think it's not necessarily good to overanalyze yourself. People can get sort of frozen, right? If you find yourself doing that, if I know anybody's doing that and they're asking me questions all the time, I do suggest that maybe they go to a therapist, because I'm not a therapist and I don't want to tell them the wrong thing, you know.
Yeah.
But, and therapy is wonderful, even if, you know, you feel fine, because it's just, you know, a good opportunity to speak with someone that's, you know, has a different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you understand yourself, then you're going to understand better sort of where you are on that Maslow thing, right? You're going to know, oh, this whole time I've been running toward this goal because, you know, this is a very common example, but, you know, because my mother wanted me to be that, you know, that's not really what I want to be, you know, or anyways, or I needed accolades, right? That's another one. People drive toward things really because they really want the praise and attention, and praise and attention is wonderful, but it is true that you should be doing the things that fulfill you and you want to do, you know, not just to get applause, right?
Absolutely.
So the more you understand yourself, you can understand why, you know, why you're doing what you're doing. Also, in my book, I talk a lot about this, and I talk about and have a suggestion for how you can sort of look back at your career. I call it your story data, right? Because I didn't mention this, but in quality management, decisions and things are also, you know, they're data driven. So, you know, you think, well, how can I do that with, you know, how can I have data for my life? Well, you do have data because you can go back and look at different decisions you've made. You can explore why you made them. You know, did you make them based on, like you said, objective reasons? And certainly there can be a mix, and, you know, you could do something just for the heck of it because you want to, of course. But whatever you choose to do, is it getting you closer to your product, right? If it's not, then that's fine if you don't mind. But if you want to get to that end goal faster or better, or, you know, then think about that when you're making the decision, because you may want to really, really do something, but it's not going to really help you. So, you know, does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, and just to clarify for our listeners, when you talk about product, you talk about your career, like what you want your career outcome to be. Yeah.
You know, and now I started a newsletter on LinkedIn, and really talking about like your life being your product. So, you know, it's like your career right now today is really a product of all these decisions you've made, and how you've made them, and why you've made them. And, you know, just to say, well, I'm still in this job because I couldn't move somewhere else, or my husband has a different job and I, you know, whatever. Those things may be true, but you still have the power to make certain decisions about that. And I'm not saying leave your family, but what I talk about in the book is, in that decision-making process, if that is true, but you're choosing and you're accepting that and saying, okay, so I'm keeping this job, then maybe you'll be happier if you realize you've made that choice and you're not going to complain every day. You know, and because people do that, they just complain, and they feel like they were forced to do this or that, but you're not forced to do anything.
Yeah. And you talk about when you're developing this process, and trying to get yourself to a satisfying place in your career, the focus should be on defining steps that are within your control, like making decisions around things that are under your control. Like, why is it so important to be able to control the outcome?
Right. Because now I just want to say, you know, this is in no way related to being, you know, a control freak, or, you know, control it. You know, it's not about that. It's about what you can impact, right? So, for example, in the book, I have an example of, you know, someone wants to go to law school or something, or get a new car, and they're thinking of all their options, and one of their options is, well, I'm sure my 80-year-old grandmother would give me the money, and then I'll have a new car, but or or go to law school. I'll go to law school. I could take out a loan, right? Or I could get an extra job. I could do this or that, but when you think about what you can control, you can't control if your grandmother's going to keep giving you money or give you money. And then does that really align with your, what I call sort of your quality policy, that you are going to depend on your grandmother who's 80 and she might need the money. And, and it sounds like an easy decision, but people make decisions all the time that are based on counting on somebody else. Now if somebody offers you a gift or something, or whatever, that's fine. But you still, it would be wrong to just count on it. Everybody's going to hand me whatever and it'll work out, because maybe it will, but your risk is going way up because you can't control that. So if you kind of make decisions and be responsible, and even if it takes you longer, you're going to get to where you want to go, and you'll be really proud, and you won't have that fear that all these other things aren't going to work out.
Right. And how empowering is it to kind of understand that you're 100% responsible for the quality of your career? You talk about that. I love that.
It is. Yeah. I think it's really empowering, and I didn't always know this, right? So, when I was younger, I had some jobs with, bosses that mistreated me, or, just were rude, or or I didn't like the job, but I just felt like I had to stay there. What other job am I ever going to get? But when you realize, hey, I'm an empowered person. I can go look for another job. I don't have to be talked to like this. You choose, right? You go look for another job. And it sounds so simple, but so many people just stay in jobs that they're not happy about. And sometimes it's lack of confidence, right? Like, I don't know if I can get another job, or I have no options. But in my book, I talk about how a lot of options people have are just things they don't want to do. So they don't put it in the option bucket, So you have to be real open to saying, what really are my options? What can I do myself? What decisions can I make?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to come across like I'm saying, don't ask for help or don't let anybody help me. Even asking for help is your option, right? Getting a mentor, or, learning more so you can do something else, right? That's something
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, of course, like there are complicating factors in all decisions that we have to make. So sometimes we stay in jobs because we need to secure a salary to pay our mortgage or our rent or pay for the kids' daycare. But then you also talk about in your book about sort of the focusing on subjective, I guess, thinking, and how like maybe we can be a little bit more open around subjective thinking, sort of like reconsidering things that maybe we hadn't considered before. And so that opens up our options and some of the paths as well.
All right. So yes. So obviously life is so complex, right? And your career is so complex. And you can't control everything, right? So that's why in quality management, like we said, there's things you can do when unexpected things happen. But what I would say to that about working, like, I've been in jobs that I didn't particularly love, but I was okay to stay there because at that time, my biggest goal was I needed that salary, to build my family and what we have, and I was fulfilled in that way, right? That was the top priority for me at the time. So that's another thing. What satisfies you along the way, changes. So a good example is just when you're in a job and you start out and you love it and you're there for several years, well, you kind of sometimes know maybe you need to move on because you don't feel as happy about it anymore, and maybe it's because you've learned a lot and grown and you're ready to do something else, so you're basically your specifications, if you will, of fulfillment or what is quality to you has changed. I mean, it's still, I want to have, for example, I want to have a job, say that, certain kind of job. Well, you can still have that, but maybe you need to move to a different place or get promoted or whatever.
Right. Right. No, you got it. So you talk about quality policy. Can you tell us what that is? And then also maybe describe a time when you really had to protect yours.
Oh, okay. So in quality management in industry, as part of building the quality culture, right? Companies have these quality policies or statement, like J&J had a credo, and a lot of companies have this, even if they're not necessarily perfectly following quality management. But when I was at J&J, I loved the way they talked about it. They said, as a manager, director, whatever you are, a leader, or even anybody in their job, if you're juggling a bunch of things, right, trying to get something accomplished, and you get in a hard spot where it gets to be too much and you're thinking, what do I do? Right? They said, always think of the J&J credo as the one ball that you will never let drop. Right? So the credo, I'm plugging J&J. So for them, they had certain things in their credo. So now I'll just, go on. Now I don't want anybody to think this is J&J. So if you think my credo is sort of like, this is very basic example. Don't break the law. Well, here I'm juggling all these things, and it gets to the point where I don't know what to do. And say it gets that severe where I don't know what to do, but I can go back and say, well, in this scenario, and let's just say it's one that maybe the law could be broken. I'm going back to my policy. I am not breaking the law. So that wipes out a whole slew of options, right?
Yeah.
Or, maybe your policy, well, policy could be, it could be your religious beliefs, but in the book, I talk about it too as your own policy that you're going to stick also to your strategic plan to get where you want to go. So, like we talked about before, making in your decision, always saying, well, wait a minute, is this aligned with my commitment to end up with a product that looks like this? And if the answer is no, then that helps you make decisions. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing.
Yeah. Did you ever struggle with your quality policy?
Yeah. And again, it's not, it sounds kind of nerdy that everybody would write down their policy, and you don't have to do that.
It's like having a mantra or just something that you live by. It's absolutely applicable.
Right. So, well, yeah, I mean, certainly, when I had to go back to my policy, job changes, because again, it was that example of, well, oh, I know a good example. I was at one company, was a contract research organization. They're like vendors for pharma. And I had worked for big pharma companies before that. But I had this job at this CRO and I loved it. And I love the people. I really, really did. But I had applied for a job at a conference. Sometimes they'll just say, oh, here's a job, well, they don't do that anymore. Here's a paper, fill it out. So this big pharma company called me, and wanted to talk to me about a job. And I interviewed and they offered me the job. And it was just the hardest thing for me because I really loved my job and I loved the people, but I knew that I should go because for me, it was going to be better to get back into a big pharma company and that was me kind of sticking to making my decision based on what I wanted later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Just an easy example. I've also in my work, I won't say too much about it, but there's been probably just one or two companies I've worked for in the pharma industry where, I was had a lot of responsibility for quality and compliance, and certain things were going on that I didn't. I did my job like I'm supposed to, and I tell quality professionals this all the time. You do what you're supposed to do, and you document it. You speak the truth, and all that kind of stuff. But if it's at a point where someone's not listening and something's going on that you just can't stand behind, I mean, really, then you're just going to have to make a decision. You may need to leave.
Yeah.
And so I've done that. Just felt like, it wasn't anything horrible, but it was just things that I felt like, well, I can't in good conscience be the leader of quality here if this is going, they're not listening. Then I said, okay, I have to move on.
Oh, that's really hard.
And it's scary because
yeah, absolutely.
And again, that's very rare,
but you had to get behind yourself and advocate for yourself. So that's
right.
Yeah. You also talk about every ending as a potential for a new beginning. And it kind of struck me. I have a question around how do you know if something within your quality system or your process is broken, or it's just time for something new, a new career or a new adventure? I have so many, I was going to say young people, but I think people at all points of their careers can feel the need to pivot based on, I guess, changing desires and things that just like
right.
things that satisfy you once may not now or in the future. So how do you know when it's time for something new?
Well, one thing I want to say is in the book, I talk about this, how systems and processes don't need your permission to exist, right? It's just something that happens. So, if when you talk about your quality system failing, I think a lot of people do have a system they're following, but it's not a quality management system. It's not, and in that way, it's not doing them justice. And so, if you have a good, healthy system for what you're doing and decision making and everything, the system wouldn't really fail. It's more like, I think what you mean is, say you got to where you wanted to be, and then all of a sudden you're not happy anymore. So you're like, oh, it's failed now. Is that what you mean?
That,
Like,
or often like there's frustrations along the way and you're like, maybe I shouldn't be here, or you could doubt yourself. I'm just saying,
right.
Well,
I think those are those
steps don't like all add up to that perfect product.
Yeah, those are those points too, where you kind of do the root cause analysis and say, well, okay, why do I just wake up every day and I just dread going to work? Some people start feeling that way, and it just kind of creeps up on you. But then other people know, I can't take it anymore. This person's driving me crazy, or I'm bored, or whatever. So really, the root cause, why are you unhappy? What are your options? Again, now I'm the kind of person that, I hate to say this, but if I totally am bored or don't want to do something, and maybe this is part of being sort of neurodiverse a little bit, I just almost cannot do it. Like, I've learned to recognize that feeling. And when it's really bad, I know it sounds defeatist, but again, it's just understanding myself and saying, no, this is not what I want to be doing. And so I have to change, I have to go do something else. And, a lot of people they're happy, like I said before, in a job or a place in their life, but things change and they change. And it doesn't mean that everything you did to get there was wrong. It just means, you're still on your journey, right?
Yeah.
So, I hope to be, still on my, I kind of feel like journey's an overused word, but I can't figure out another one to use. But I want to be on my journey, forever, because I never want to say, well, this was the best and the rest of it's not going to be as good. Who wants to say that?
I think what you're sort of saying is like you want to be learning and changing and finding new exciting things.
Right. And it's like also in quality management, there's continuous improvement.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that you were necessarily flawed, but it means, how can we improve? Maybe, in industry, they go back, they don't just one time say, what does our customer want? They're doing it constantly.
Yeah.
Make changes to their product, right?
Yeah.
So, people should do that too. Be self-aware.
Yeah.
So, it's just sort of a philosophy and way of planning for what you want, making decisions, knowing how to evaluate things that go wrong, or even if you make a mistake or something, it's really understanding, why did I make that mistake? And instead of beating yourself up, view it as, okay, this is continuous improvement. I'm going to learn from this. And the older I get, I'm just such a believer in learning. Like every mistake even is teaching you, and it's just incredible when you are able to look back on your life and see that.
Yeah. I like thinking about it as continuous improvement, because who doesn't want like a better existence,
Yeah. I was thinking about it last night because yesterday was my daughter's birthday, and I was gonna I wrote something to her, and I was gonna write the best is yet to come, and then I thought, I don't want her to think that I'm thinking like she didn't do good yet or something, which I didn't mean at all. But then I was thinking more about it because of today. I thought, well, who wants to not? I hope I can always say the best is yet to come, because I want my life to be getting better and better, not worse and worse, and not staying exactly the same. So,
and to know that that's in your control, which is really cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fantastic. And thank you for putting this book out into the world. I love, as I said, the idea of being able to roadmap and be able to plan for your future in a very concrete way. So thank you for giving us those tools.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. I'm so passionate about this, and do want to, expose the book to others and talk about it more. So
yeah,
I really.
So where can people find you? Where can they find the book?
Well, you can find it pretty much on any online place. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of that. Maybe bookstores. I'm not sure, but excuse me. I also have it on my website, and if someone wants to purchase it there, I can sign it for them if they want, or for somebody as a gift or whatever. And yeah, my website is just my name, PenelopePrzekop.com. I do have the newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Here's What Helps. I'd love for people to go and check that out and subscribe. And on the site you can find links to my pharma company and all that kind of stuff, and my art. And I have a little store with doodads. So
oh, so exciting. Okay, we'll put all of this in the show notes. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for supporting another episode of Grasshopper's Balanceness podcast. If you liked it, please rate, review, and subscribe on our Apple and Spotify pages. Send me a screenshot at hello@grasshopper.com. That's GRASSHOPPHER to enter yourself into this episode's surprise raffle. And be the first to hear about upcoming episodes and events by signing up for Grasshopper's newsletter, which can be found on our website. Happy balancing until the next time.